Hello, brothers. Beautiful. Now it has reached the point where he dares not act. Why? Because his hegemony is on the verge of collapse. It only needs a straw to break the camel's back. The current strategy is quite simple. That is to remain low-key. Just wait it out. He can exhaust the American empire. The US claims to have a military budget exceeding $900 billion. The highest in the world. That number is frightening. Right? But how much actually reaches the battlefield? Less than a third. Look at these shocking examples. A pack of ordinary screws is priced at $90,000. Several ordinary goats. Purchased by the military for $6 million. What is this? This is the military-industrial complex in the US. Naked exploitation. Pentagon funds disappear like into a black hole. They vanish in various intermediaries. Arms dealers, defense contractors, and consulting firms run by retired generals. Layer upon layer of blood-sucking. In the end, less than $300 billion is actually used for combat. Now, US soldiers basically have to buy their own equipment. Is this still a super military power? It's simply a joke. The current situation of the US is reminiscent of the Ming Dynasty over 300 years ago. A version of the Chongzhen era. On the surface, the national power is strong. But in reality, the cord is hollow. At that time, the Ming Empire had 900 million taels of silver flowing into China. Yet, Emperor Chongzhen's annual revenue was a meager 3 million taels. Less than 0.3% of the total silver flowing into the treasury. The GDP of Ming was far ahead of Qing. The reality is that they can't even pay soldiers' salaries now. While Wall Street financiers and Silicon Valley tech giants hold trillions in assets. The federal government, however, has annual deficits. With a debt rate of $36 trillion. Isn't this the same script? When Trump wanted to clarify where the military funds were going, he sent 2 groups to Afghanistan to audit. But the planes crashed mysteriously. The story behind this is worth pondering. The US indeed knows how to fight. But it only turns small conflicts into endless wars of attrition. From 2001 to present, the Afghanistan war was supposed to end in months. But it lasted 20 years. Afghanistan's GDP was less than $200 billion. Yet the US spent over $20 billion there. What kind of war is this? Using gold as bullets? Making cannons with diamonds? The truth is that every war becomes an ATM for vested interests. Defense officials, arms dealers, and logistics contractors all profit from war. US military actions are no longer for victory, but for continuous consumption. To keep war profits flowing. However, this model of fighting to sustain fighting has long been proven unsustainable. After Japan tasted success in the First Sino-Japanese War, it became uncontrollable. To win that war, Japan issued bonds 4 times, raising 1.16 billion yen. The entire nation supported this robbery. At that time, the Beiyang fleet was corrupt and decayed. Shells were filled with sand. The ships were severely outdated. Japan won easily. The Qing government paid reparations of 2.3 billion taels, equivalent to 5 years of Japan's revenue. This huge sum accelerated Japan's industrialization, putting it among Asia's powers. But such easy war profits are not always attainable. In the 1904 Russo-Japanese War, Japan suffered 60,000 casualties at Port Arthur to defeat Russia. After the war, they received no reparations. The Japanese were furious. They saved to support the war. Was this the result? The Kato government collapsed within 2 months. During World War II, after occupying northeast China, Japan thought it could continuously extract wealth. But it became an ATM for the US. In 1931, the US exported only 3,500 tons of crude oil to Japan. By 1937, it increased tenfold. Exports of scrap steel increased 40-fold. Between 1937 and 1940, Japan imported $1 billion worth of goods from the U.S. 70% were military supplies. In 1940, U.S. exports to China were only $78 million. To Japan, however, it reached $227 million. 3 times the exports to China. The wealth Japan seized ultimately flowed into American pockets. This is the truth. Japan was merely a tool for the U.S. to harvest East Asia. The tricks of the U.S. are far superior to Japan's. It does not require full-scale wars, only to maintain military presence globally. Printing trillions of dollars. Every year, crazily printing money. Collecting wealth from around the world. Let's look at these shocking numbers. In 2019, the U.S. debt was only $22.5 trillion. Now it has soared to $37 trillion. In just 5 years, it surged by $15 trillion. This debt is essentially trillions. The U.S. is shedding money globally. Japan launched invasions. Struggling to seize billions. Fighting tooth and nail to grab billions. While the U.S. only needs to press a button for $100 trillion. To seize $15 trillion in global wealth. This is the true wealth extraction. Now it has reached $36 trillion. The annual interest payment alone amounts to $1 trillion. That's equivalent to the entire military budget of the U.S. The U.S. continues to print money. But fewer and fewer countries are willing to take it on. Can a country that can't even issue debt afford to start a full-scale war? The U.S. can only encourage its allies to be cannon fodder, while it hides behind counting money. But the problem is that even the most loyal allies are reluctant to take risks. The former leader of the Japanese self-defense forces fell into the sea. The incident occurred near the East China Sea. Yet Japan insists it's unrelated to the U.S. Why? Because Japan is managing well. They no longer want to profit from the U.S. South Korea is even more indecisive. On one hand, they receive technology from the U.S. On the other hand, they maintain close trade with the U.S. They often play both sides. Although they publicly oppose the U.S., they still engage in iron ore business. Even Europe is starting to question the benefits of following the U.S. Everyone now sees a reality. The U.S. hegemony is setting sun. Why follow a sinking ship to mutual destruction? Just look at the trend of global de-dollarization. This is the true Achilles heel of U.S. hegemony. In 2000, the dollar accounted for up to 71% of global foreign exchange reserves. Now it has dropped to 58%. And the decline is accelerating. Why? Because everyone sees through the essence of the dollar. It's an empty check that will never be redeemed. The BRICS countries have started to establish their own payment systems, avoiding the dollar-dominated SWIFT. Russia and Iran have completely abandoned the dollar, using their own currencies or gold for transactions. Saudi Arabia, the traditional dollar protector, is considering using the yuan for oil transactions. Even the EU is exploring the internationalization of the euro, reducing dependence on the dollar. Without dollar hegemony, the U.S. parasitic financial system will collapse. Without a continuous influx of wealth from around the world, the U.S. massive military machine will grind to a halt due to lack of funds. No. The fall of a great empire is the most dangerous. The recent series of crazy actions by the U.S. is a warning. Historically, the collapse of great empires is a gradual process. The Ming dynasty took only decades to decline. The British Empire took over half a century to shrink to this small island. The Soviet Union went from invading Afghanistan to collapse in just over a decade. But the U.S. is different. They possess the world's strongest military and financial hegemony. If they take risks, the consequences could be unimaginable. East Asia must respond cautiously. They must not provoke this wounded beast. Yet they need to make it clear the cost of challenging East Asia. The latest advanced aircraft and radar represent this strategy. When the F-2 can only rely on 8-to-1 tactics against East Asian aircraft, the U.S. will understand. Even if they want to fight the final battle, they have little chance of victory. The gene of both civilizations is expansion. Once expansion is hindered, it often leads to greater conflict. The outbreak of world wars follows this rule. We cannot let such historical tragedies repeat. Although the US hasn't initiated large-scale wars, its military capability remains strong. What is needed is a dual approach. On one hand, prepare for the worst. On the other hand, do everything possible to avoid the worst-case scenario, at least until the new generation of combat systems is fully established. The wisest strategy is to continue development. Modern America is self-destructing. Now is the key time for achieving great rejuvenation. Many can seize opportunities and achieve wealth freedom. He will continue to share strategic opportunities. Don't forget. Be sure to follow. Don't miss any updates.